Baby, I bought the tickets. Tell me where you are, and I'll get a seat next to you. Just thinking about your husband being right there, and us having an in-depth exchange right in front of him, is thrilling. As I was feeling dizzy, my wife's urging voice rang out. Honey, let's go. She must be eager for some excitement. It's rare to have a holiday, and our child is attending a summer camp organized by the kindergarten. I had planned to take this opportunity to enjoy some quality time with my wife at home, but she insisted on going out together, saying it had been too long since we last did so. Since she asked, I couldn't possibly spoil the mood. My phone was still charging in the study, so I casually picked up my wife's phone to check which movies were playing recently. But then I saw these messages. She actually has a secret account. I felt a wave of dizziness and didn't know how to react. My wife had already packed and was urging me to hurry up and buy the tickets so we could leave. Coming. What kind of movie do you want to see? I'm buying the tickets now. While I was verbally responding, I was trembling as I scrolled through the previous chat records. Honey, he's not going to work today, so I can't accompany you. I really miss you. I told him to go see a movie together. Honey, you should come too. How ridiculous. My wife, with whom I have a family, is calling another man honey with a level of intimacy I've never seen from her towards me. For a moment, I felt like I was the one standing in the way of true love. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I would never have believed that my always dignified and virtuous wife could do such a thing. My wife and I met during our graduate studies. In the male-dominated computer science department, she was the undisputed belle of the college, pursued by many. From the moment I first saw her, I was smitten and began to pursue her passionately. I brought her breakfast, helped her with her coding, and assisted with her paper submissions. Everyone in the college knew that I was the one who worked tirelessly for her. After more than a year of persistence, she was finally moved and agreed to be with me. After graduation, I proposed to her, and everything went smoothly, like a fairy tale romance. She didn't like the pressure of the workplace, so I let her stay at home while I worked overtime day and night to support the family. When she complained that I was too busy and didn't take good care of her, I became even more attentive, doing my best to help with household chores and always bringing her small gifts to make her happy. Later, we had our daughter, Emma. I still vividly remember how painful it was for her during childbirth, her lips losing all color from the pain. So I took the initiative to say that we wouldn't have any more children. Emma was enough, and I couldn't bear to see my beloved wife suffer anymore. Everything was perfect. Until just now, when I saw that message sent to her. The beautiful life came to an abrupt end. Looking back, it's really laughable. I felt guilty for not being able to spend more time at home with her, only to find out that she was eager for me to be away so she could be with other men. I quickly booked 2 movie tickets, marked the message as unread, and exited the chat interface. When we arrived at the cinema, we quickly found our seats. 5 minutes before the movie started, the seat next to my wife was taken by someone. Out of the corner of my eye, I was shocked to see that it was none other than my wife's nominal younger uncle. Although they are from the same village and have no blood relation, the complex web of relatives in the neighborhood meant that my wife could still address him as younger uncle. He moved to the city last year from his hometown, saying he wanted to make a career for himself. Now it seems he hasn't made a career, but he has managed to get involved with my wife. I watched them out of the corner of my eye as my wife casually reached out her hand, and the man's breathing became heavy. I felt like my lungs were about to explode. I couldn't stand by and do nothing while they continued their secret affair, so I reached out and forcibly pulled my wife's hand away. The two of them, immersed in their illicit pleasure, were stunned for a moment before realizing that I had discovered their actions. Honey, let me explain. Now she was calling me honey again. The cinema was silent, and I didn't want to make a scene in public, so I dragged her out by her hand. Her younger uncle didn't dare to stop me and slunk away when I wasn't looking. When we got home, I finally released my grip on my wife's wrist. Tell me, how long have you been involved with him? She insisted that it had only just started. A few days ago, the younger uncle had invited her out to dinner. She thought it was safe since he was a relative, so she went alone. But when she arrived, she realized that he had ulterior motives. She couldn't resist and ended up giving in. He threatened her, saying that if she didn't cooperate, he would reveal their affair to everyone. She had no choice but to go along with it. My wife knelt down and begged me, honey, I had no choice. Please forgive me for the sake of our years together. I've always wanted to confess, but I was afraid you'd be angry, so I didn't dare. Now that you know everything, I feel relieved. I know I've done something wrong. If you don't forgive me, I'll jump off the balcony. Please don't take it out on Emma. She's your biological child, and you need to take care of her. Saying this, she stood up and rushed towards the balcony. I quickly grabbed her, unable to stand by and do nothing as she cried and threatened to kill herself. After all, she was the woman I had loved for so many years. Moreover, she mentioned our daughter Emma, who was innocent. I couldn't pursue the matter further. I couldn't bear to hurt the woman I loved, nor could I bear to hurt my precious daughter Emma. My wife also promised me that she would never see her younger uncle again. It seemed like everything was back to normal, and life returned to its usual calm. But I knew that nothing had truly passed. Every time I was intimate with my wife, I would see the face of her younger uncle in my mind. Would she be just as happy with him? Would she be just as cooperative? Just thinking about it made me unable to continue. My wife seemed to know about my inner struggle, and every time this happened, she would calmly turn off the lights. It's late, let's go to sleep. I always thought that everything would eventually pass and that we would return to a peaceful life. But my wife gave me another big surprise. After the affair was discovered, she proposed to find a job to contribute to the household and make up for her guilt. I tried to dissuade her several times, but eventually let her go. I was actually moved because at least I knew that my wife was trying to repair the relationship and maintain the family. However, what made me uncomfortable was that for a long time, she would leave early and come home late, telling me that she was working overtime at the company and was very busy. One day, when she called to say she was working overtime again, it suddenly started raining heavily. I thought it was time to mend our relationship, so without telling her, I went to her company building to pick her up. But to my surprise, the windows of her company were pitch black, clearly not the scene of someone working. I called her again. Where are you now? She didn't know I was already downstairs and still tried to deceive me. I'm working overtime at the company. There's too much work, and I won't be able to leave for a while. You can go to sleep first and don't wait for me. I'm already downstairs at your company. She was silent for a long time before finally saying, Go home first, I'll be back soon. By the time I drove home, she was already there. Since I had already lost trust in her after discovering her affair with her younger uncle, I was suspicious when I saw her avoid my gaze. I immediately questioned her. Where have you really been? She hesitated for a long time and couldn't say a word. Did you go to see that man again? I roared at her. No, honey, believe me, I've really cut off all contact with him. Then where have you been? What have you been doing? Have you been lying to me all these days when you said you were working overtime? I just felt so guilty and didn't know how to face you, so I stayed outside. When you called me, I was actually walking around the park. I wanted to slap her face. Even now, she was still trying to deceive me. With such heavy rain, there was no shelter in the nearby park. How could she have come home with dry hair and not a single drop of rain on her? Look outside and then say that again. I was convinced that she had been with her uncle again, and that was why she was lying to me. She looked out the window and realized it was raining. She immediately became flustered. Honey, I'm sorry. Please don't be angry. I beg of you, let this go this time. I knew she was admitting that she had lied about coming home late today to be with that man. She had betrayed our family again for him. I've already forgiven you once, but you haven't changed. Tomorrow, we're going to the Civil Affairs Bureau to get a divorce. I issued the final ultimatum and turned back to the bedroom. My wife immediately knelt down and crawled over to hold my leg. Honey, don't divorce me. Please don't divorce me. I'll never do it again. But I wouldn't be deceived by her again. The last time I chose to forgive her, and she rewarded me by cheating over and over again. I couldn't stand this life for a moment longer. Our daughter, Emma, heard our argument and ran out. Mommy, Daddy, what are you doing? My wife seemed to see a lifeline and threw herself at Emma, hugging her. Emma, kneel down and beg your daddy. Beg him not to abandon us. I'll never do it again. You have to beg him. Emma looked at me with wide eyes. Is Daddy not going to want Emma anymore? Is it because Emma was naughty? As soon as Emma appeared, my heart softened. How could I bear to give up on my precious daughter? All these years, I've worked so hard and made so much money, all to provide her with a better life and a better education, so she can have a better future. How could I possibly give her up? Every time I argued with my wife, as long as she brought out this trump card, I would always give in involuntarily. I love my daughter, so I'm always the loser. This time was no exception. My wife voluntarily proposed that if I was worried, she could take the child back to her hometown for a while and completely cut off contact with that younger uncle. She deleted and blocked all contact with that man right in front of me and booked tickets to go home. She promised me that once she got home, she would stay inside with her parents and never go out. I believed her words and let go of my worries. I thought that although my in-laws had never been very fond of me, they would never support or help their daughter cheat. But the reality proved that I was too naive. The truth was much worse than I had imagined. After my wife went back to her hometown, I felt empty at home. Every day, I came home to a cold and empty house, which was very uncomfortable. Especially without my daughter Emma's constant laughter and playful energy, I was really not used to it. So, after a project ended, I asked my boss for a leave of absence. I wanted to go back to my hometown to be with my wife and daughter. I carefully selected several beautiful dolls as gifts for my daughter. Thinking of my wife, I turned back to the jewelry store and bought her a set of pure gold necklaces, bracelets, and rings, wanting to surprise her. I used to give her such surprises often, but I hadn't done it for a long time after the last incident. I even felt that I had neglected her in this regard. When I proposed to her, I promised to always be good to her. Since I had chosen to forgive her, I should keep my promise and give her surprises from time to time. On the way home by car, I kept fantasizing about how surprised and happy my wife and daughter would be when they saw me and received my gifts. But what I didn't expect was that the gifts they gave me first were only shocking, not delightful. When I parked the car and pushed open the door, what I saw was my beloved wife sitting intimately on a man's lap. That man was none other than my wife's younger uncle. According to my wife, he should have just found a job, and the company's strict regulations meant that he couldn't leave without losing his entire salary, so he had to keep working in the city. But now, here he was, in this place, holding my dear wife and watching my daughter perform a song and dance for them. I was about to rush over when I suddenly heard my daughter, who had just finished her performance, curiously ask, "Dad, Mom, why aren't you reacting? Why aren't you praising me?" The air was filled with silence as she followed her mother's gaze and looked at me. She awkwardly rubbed her hands together. "Daddy, why did you come?" It was hard to believe that such a young child could be so adept at deception, calling someone else daddy one moment and then turning around to call me daddy the next. A terrible thought crossed my mind: is Emma really my biological daughter? Apparently, my arrival was an unwelcome surprise to them, shattering the previously joyful and harmonious atmosphere in the courtyard. My wife let out a scream and ran back into the house, while I lunged at the man and started a physical altercation. My in-laws hurried out of the house to break up the fight. It turned out they were all home, fully aware of their daughter's infidelity, yet they turned a blind eye and even provided a place for the lovers to meet. When they saw me, instead of feeling ashamed, they brazenly accused me of being the cause of all this. Sophia had no choice. "You're always so busy with work. What difference does it make whether she has a husband or not? If we had known you would treat Sophia this way, we would never have let our daughter marry you. Now you blame Sophia? Why don't you look at yourself? If it weren't for him filling the void in Sophia's life, she wouldn't have been able to survive." Listening to their accusations, it seemed as if I had committed some heinous crime, driving my wife to cheat. But why did I work so hard, not even daring to rest, if not for our family, if not to provide a better life for my wife and child? Moreover, didn't these two spend my money? The costs of their house renovation, their car purchase, and even the daily household expenses all came from my pocket. Yet all my efforts and sacrifices were not met with gratitude but were used as evidence of my neglect and failure to take care of my wife. Our daughter, Emma, also rushed over and stood in front of the man. "Don't hit my dad. You're the bad guy. Don't bully my dad." I looked at her in shock. After raising her for so many years, I felt for the first time that her face was so unfamiliar to me. "He's your dad. What about me? I've worked so hard to raise you. What am I?" In the blink of an eye, my wife, Sophia, had come out of the house fully dressed. She ran out, hugged my arm, and chided her parents, "Stop talking nonsense." Judging from their attitudes, I was almost convinced that I was the one who had done something wrong. Without hesitation, I pulled my arm out of Sophia's grasp and turned to leave. "You pick a time to come back. We're getting a divorce." "No, honey, don't be angry. Let me explain." Sophia hurriedly chased after me. But her mother stopped her. "Go ahead and divorce. Let him leave. The money you've saved over the years is enough for you and Benjamin to live on." The man also quickly chimed in. Right. I promise I'll take good care of Sophia. I'll be with her every day. I'm the one who truly loves Sophia and is good to her." This document was collected from the internet. Please delete it within 24 hours. For resource finding or joining the Universal Novel Group, Jiangqing_0. This file can be opened with any novel software. Direct reading can damage your eyes. I got into the car, not wanting to listen to the shameless ramblings of this family any longer. Only when I was in the car did I suddenly remember Emma. I stepped on the gas, eager to get home and find out the truth. When I got home, I went into Emma's bedroom and, after searching for a while, finally found a few strands of hair. I carefully collected them, put them together with my own hair, and sent them for a paternity test. I had always been convinced that Emma was my daughter, and I forgave Sophia's infidelity several times to provide a better living environment for Emma. But if she wasn't my biological child, then all my efforts would have been in vain. The scenes of her standing in front of me in the courtyard, preventing me from touching that man, were still vivid in my mind. How ridiculous. The woman I loved with all my heart was sitting in someone else's arms, and the daughter I had carefully raised was protecting that man. I thought I had been kind to my in-laws, sending gifts during festivals and holidays. Even if I was too busy to go myself, I would have someone else deliver the gifts on my behalf. Whenever they had a need, I was the first to step up, providing money, goods, and labor. More than once, my in-laws had held my hand and said that even their own son wouldn't be better than me. But now they were helping Sophia cheat on me, the son-in-law who was better than their own son, and even blaming me for it. For several days, Sophia didn't show up again, and I didn't bother to look for her. In this situation, meeting would only make everyone feel worse. I threw myself into my work, trying to use the busyness of work to cover up the mess in my life. Even my boss couldn't stand it anymore and advised me to take care of myself, rest well, and spend more time with my wife and children. But he didn't know the surprises my wife and children had given me. I couldn't tell anyone about these things. Should I go around announcing that my wife had cheated on me? That my in-laws knew everything but not only didn't stop it, but also encouraged it? That the daughter I had raised with all my heart might not be my biological child, and she was protecting that man in front of me, calling him daddy? All of this was too ugly. I could only swallow all the pain with gritted teeth. After all, family scandals should not be publicized. A few days later, the hospital called me to pick up the results of the paternity test. From the company to the hospital, my legs were so weak that I couldn't drive myself. The taxi driver I encountered even suspected that I had a serious illness, as my legs were shaking so badly. He kindly helped me out of the car and walked me to the hospital lobby when we arrived. I quickly obtained the test results. Facing that thin piece of paper, I became timid again, like when I used to look at my report card as a child, feeling anxious and uneasy. The feeling now was even worse than when I was young. But I had to face it. I gritted my teeth and revealed the answer to myself. As expected, the result was not surprising. Emma and I were excluded from having a blood relationship. She was not my child. Even though I had anticipated this, my heart still raced, I felt dizzy, and I blacked out and fainted. When I opened my eyes again, I was already lying in a hospital bed. The nurse told me that I had fainted due to excessive emotional excitement. I took out my phone and sent a message to Sophia. I'd done the paternity test with Emma. After a long silence, she replied, "I'm sorry for what I've done, but you have to believe that both I and Emma love you." It turned out that she had always known that Emma was not my child, yet she still used this product of infidelity to deceive me into forgiving her and maintaining our family. "When are you coming back? Let's handle the divorce procedures." I felt that I had never been this calm during this period. Think it over again. After all, we've been married for so many years. We have feelings. It's a pity to divorce just like that. She still didn't want to divorce and even brought up our years of marriage. If she truly had feelings for me, she wouldn't have had a child with someone else. She wouldn't have cheated repeatedly. She wouldn't have cried and promised never to do it again, only to continue seeing that man. I don't want to think about it anymore. Either you come back and agree to the divorce, or I'll file a lawsuit. If you want everyone to know the ugly things you've done, just keep dragging this out. I issued the final ultimatum without any politeness. Now I had no feelings left for her. I had given her chances time and again, only to be betrayed over and over again. All right, I'll come back tomorrow. Don't get angry. Let's talk this through, okay? As expected, she was scared and immediately agreed to come back the next day and have a good talk. But I really couldn't think of anything left to discuss given our current situation. Sophia didn't come back alone, she was accompanied by Emma and my mother-in-law. As soon as she saw me, she approached and said, "I've made up my mind. I want to make our marriage work." I was almost amused by her audacity. When did I ever give her the chance to reconsider? My mother-in-law chimed in, trying to persuade me. As the saying goes, it's better to preserve a marriage than to destroy 10 temples. Since Sophia is willing to reconcile, you two should try to make it work. Sophia quickly added, "Honey, you have to believe me. I've always loved you. Even though I was with someone else physically, my heart has always been with you." I felt like vomiting from their nauseating words. I knew they didn't want to divorce because they saw me as a cash machine, someone to spend money on them. Over the years, all the household expenses and my in-laws' spending had been covered by me. Finding another man like me wouldn't be easy. But this time I was determined. No matter what they said, I wouldn't back down. Seeing my resolve, Sophia stopped trying to persuade me. "If you insist on the divorce, then you have to give me a satisfactory share of the property. You've been busy with work all these years, while I've been managing the household and taking care of the child. You owe me a substantial amount of money as compensation." I couldn't hold back my anger any longer and slapped her across the face. "How dare you mention the child? Who is Emma's real father? I've already done the paternity test. Are you still going to use Emma as a bargaining chip? Does it really matter if she's your biological child? She calls you dad, so you should give me the money." I couldn't believe how shameless she was. "I won't give you a single cent. If you're not satisfied, go to court and sue me. Let's see who's in the right and who's in the wrong." Sophia fell silent this time, but her mother-in-law wasn't ready to give up. Sophia had been dating my cousin from the same village since middle school. "Technically, you met her in college. You're the one who came between them." I looked at the old woman's face in shock. She was unashamed and spoke with conviction. "My brother and Sophia were a perfect match, madly in love. If it weren't for you butting in, they might have been together all along. Even if they couldn't get married, they could still have had a happy life." I looked at Sophia in disbelief. "Have you been seeing him all these years?" I had always thought that Sophia started cheating after we got married, but it turned out that a web of deception had already been cast over me from the very beginning, from the moment I first asked her if she was single, from the moment I proposed to her, from the moment I wholeheartedly built a family with her. "That man is old and ugly. How could you betray me for someone like him?" I stared at Sophia, trying to find an answer. "He's different from you. He knows how to coax me into giving him money, to act cute and ask for gifts. I feel like a real woman when I spend money on him. You, on the other hand, are a chauvinist who just silently transfers money to me every month." I never imagined that my hard work to support the family would be my fault, that I was wearing the horns because I couldn't act like a kept man and spend a woman's money, because I insisted on earning money to support my family. "Get out. Pack your things and leave."